They buried my Claire on a Tuesday. They buried me on a Sunday. I just happened to be breathing at my own funeral, sitting at the head of a table laid with my dead wife's dishes, listening to my new family tell me what I was worth. But let me start at the beginning. My name is Mike Harrison. Cedar Falls, Iowa, is the only patch of earth I've ever known. For 54 years, I've clocked in at the John Deere plant, fished the Cedar River, and passed the green bean casserole at First Lutheran potlucks. I built a quiet, honest life. Then ovarian cancer took Claire in her sleep. Afterward, the silence in our house was so complete it rang in my ears. I didn't sleep for 3 days. When Lydia came along 2 years later, I mistook loneliness for a blessing. She was laughter and light, and she had a daughter, Kayla, already 16. I thought I could be a steady hand for them. I wasn't trying to replace a family. I was trying to remember what one felt like. That Sunday in February, I cooked a roast like my mother taught me, slow, with rosemary, until the air itself felt like an embrace. My brothers came, friends from church, Lydia's sister. The table was full. For a moment, it almost looked real. Kayla arrived late, earbuds in, wearing a shirt that showed her stomach and boots unfit for the Iowa cold. She didn't speak. When we bowed our heads to pray, she exhaled a sigh that could wilt corn. After the amen, she was already smirking at her phone. Kayla, honey, I said, gentle as I knew how, phone's down at the table. She didn't look up, just leaned back in her chair, a queen holding court. You're not my dad, she announced to the room. You're just some old guy who fixes tractors and thinks a cosign loan makes you family. The silence was absolute. My brother stopped chewing. My friends studied their plates. I felt the words land in my chest like a stone. Before I could find my voice, Lydia reached over and patted her daughter's arm. I told you, she said, not to Kayla, but to the whole stunned table. She already has a father. You're the checking account with a pulse. There it was, my epitaph, delivered over pot roast. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of wood on wood was the loudest sound in the world. I'll get more iced tea, I said, and walked to the kitchen just to remember how to breathe. My brother Rick found me there, his hand on my shoulder. Mike, was all he said. I'm fine, I lied. He just looked at me with those eyes that had seen me through Claire's funeral, through the hollow years. You sure you know what you're doing? I had no answer. By the time I returned, the conversation had moved to gas prices, the Midwestern white flag. Dinner ended, people left. The house settled into a quiet that felt final. That night, under the lamplight, I stared at Claire's picture on the wall. A cold, clear voice spoke inside me. If I'm not allowed to be her father, then I sure as hell won't be her provider. The next morning, after they left, I drove to Blackhawk Credit Union. The air inside smelled of burnt coffee and permanence. I need to review my accounts, I told the teller, all of them. In a small office, a young banker scrolled, paused, and said, huh. My stomach dropped. What is it? Several credit accounts, opened online in the last 2 years, under your social. He turned the screen. 3 credit cards, $28,000 in limits. He printed the transactions. Louis Vuitton, $2,480. Coachella tickets, $1,500. Hyatt Regency, $687. Sephora, $328. Venmo transfers to memory, Kayla Thompson, $200 each. The paper trembled in my hand. There's more, he said, voice soft. A joint account, you and Lydia Thompson, opened online, thousands withdrawn monthly. I left with a folder of betrayal an inch thick. The cold in my bones wasn't from the Iowa winter. I didn't go home. I drove to the uni campus, to the student lot where Kayla parked the Civic, my Civic. I don't know why I opened the glove box. Maybe I was looking for proof of a life I was funding. I found a different proof. There, nestled beside old receipts, was a small, navy blue velvet box, worn at the edges. The engagement ring box I'd bought for Claire a lifetime ago. The ring itself was long gone, but the box, I kept it in a locked drawer, a sacred thing. Inside the lid was a folded Polaroid, Kayla, holding the empty box to her face, flashing a peace sign, captioned in pen, fake proposal pics for Insta, lol. The air left my lungs. The credit cards were theft. The words at dinner were cruelty. But this was a desecration. She had taken a shrine to my greatest love and turned it into a prop for her internet fantasy. I closed the glove box gently. Okay, I whispered to the empty car. That's enough. The storm inside me wasn't hot anymore. It was crystalline, calculating. Midwestern men don't scream. We make plans. At 5:30 the next morning, frost glittering under the streetlights of the uni lot, I started the Civic. The engine purred, a sound I'd paid for. The dorm doors burst open. Kayla ran out in pajamas, hair wild, screaming before her feet hit the asphalt. That's my car. You can't take it. I stepped out into the brittle air. It's mine. My name. My money. My real dad's in prison. You're all I have. Her voice broke, a crack of genuine terror. I looked at her. This stranger I'd tried to call a daughter. Your real dad's in prison, I said, my voice steady as the frozen ground. And your fake dad just got paroled. A car door slammed. Lydia came running, wrapped in my flannel. Mike, what the hell are you doing? I'm reconciling the books, I said. The tuition autopay is off. The phone line is cancelled. The insurance stopped 15 minutes ago. You're punishing her, Lydia shrieked. No, I said, meeting her gaze. You told me what I was. A checking account with a pulse. The pulse is still here. The checking part is closed. I drove home alone, the heater thawing my hands, the relief so profound it felt like sorrow. When I walked in, suitcases were open in the hallway, clothes spilled like guts. Kayla sobbed operatically. Lydia pointed a trembling finger at me, her eyes full of a fury that had no power left. I walked past them, up the stairs to the room that was no longer ours. The cold, quiet clarity held me. The storm had broken, and I was still standing. For the first time since Claire died, I was absolutely, terribly, free. You're insane, she hissed, dragging a suitcase toward the door. We're staying at my sister's until you get your head right. I didn't answer. The silence between us was complete. A bridge burned to ash. The front door slammed with a force that shook the walls, making Claire's picture tilt on its nail. Then, a different silence descended, not the heavy, waiting kind I'd endured for months. This was a clean, deep quiet, the kind you find at the bottom of a well. I ate leftover chili standing at the kitchen window, watching the snow dust my reclaimed Civic in the driveway. I felt neither triumph nor guilt, just a hollowed-out calm. Emptiness, I decided, wasn't the enemy. It was the blank page before a new sentence. My phone buzzed at 8, an unknown number. Mr. Harrison? Bob Jensen, from the credit union. His voice, graveled with decades of Iowa winters, was somber. Evening, Bob. A weighted pause. Mike, we finished the review on those accounts. It's more than suspicious. It's criminal. The chili turned to stone in my stomach. How criminal? The kind that needs a judge, he said, each word measured. Multiple accounts, forged signatures, some under your name, some under Lydia's, and a few under another party's. He let that last phrase hang. You need to come in. And Mike? Don't confront them. Let the system work. I'm done confronting, I said, and meant it. Anger had burned off, leaving behind a cold, surgical clarity. That's a far more dangerous state for a man to be in. The next morning, the sky was the color of old ice. Bob met me at the credit union, his face as grim as the weather. In a back office, he laid a stack of paper between us, a testament of betrayal. 16 months, at least, he said, pointing to a line of digital signatures that weren't mine. Credit cards, a line of credit, even a personal loan, tens of thousands. Secondary user, Kayla Thompson. Receipts for a life I hadn't lived, funded by my name. Bob's eyes, pale blue and tired, held mine. I've known you since you financed your first pickup. You're the most decent man I bank. You don't deserve this. His voice thickened. And by God, we're not going to let it stand. 2 weeks later, Lydia's paperwork arrived. She was suing for financial abuse, claiming my withdrawal of support had caused Kayla emotional trauma. The absurdity was breathtaking. The county courthouse echoed with the sound of my own footsteps. I wore the navy jacket Claire bought me. Lydia arrived in a defiant red dress, Kayla trailing behind, phone in hand. already playing the victim for an invisible audience. Her lawyer, a slick man with a smile like a closed drawer, oozed over. "The court will see the harm done to my client," he said, offering a hand I didn't take. I simply looked past him. We took our seats, the divide of the courtroom aisle between us like a canyon. Then the side door opened, and Bob Jensen walked in, carrying a thicker file than hers. He sat beside me. Lydia's lawyer straightened. "Who is this?" "A witness, Your Honor," Bob said, standing as the judge called order. And he began. He spoke of my 25-year history, of integrity etched in every payment. Then he dismantled their fiction with the slow, sure rhythm of a truth that cannot be rushed. He presented the forged documents, the transactions. Then, finally, he held up enlarged screenshots. "From Miss Thompson's public Instagram account," he said, his voice cutting the air. "Posing with this." The photo showed Kayla. A peace sign flashed beside the tiny, worn velvet box, Claire's engagement ring box. The caption was clearly visible, "Fake proposal pics for Insta. Lol." A sharp gasp cut the room. Kayla's face went white. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, turned a glacial gaze on them. "You stole a memento from a man's late wife, for a joke?" Lydia began to sputter, misunderstanding. Teenage mistake, but the foundation was already gone. The judge's ruling was swift. All fraudulent debts assigned to Lydia. The matter referred for potential prosecution. The case against me dismissed entirely. Lydia's knees gave way. She caught herself on the table. A marionette with cut strings. Kayla stared at the floor. Finally, utterly silent. Bob leaned close. "You all right, Mike?" I nodded. It was over. As I walked out, Lydia lunged toward me, her voice a broken whisper. "Mike, please, we can fix this." I kept walking. She wasn't losing a husband. She was losing her cover. That wasn't revenge. It was arithmetic. The air outside was sharp and clean. Bob clapped my shoulder. A silent communication between men who understand that some storms are weathered, not fought. Then he was gone. I stood on the courthouse steps, watching my breath fog in the February light. The weight was gone. Not shifted, not eased, gone. The house, in the weeks that followed, relearned its own sounds. The sigh of the furnace, the groan of the old maple in the wind, the quiet hum of a refrigerator keeping its own counsel. It was the silence of my life with Claire, a peaceful, inhabited quiet. I started fixing things, the loose drawer, the sticky window. I began volunteering with the church group, mending porch steps for widows and railings for the elderly. Simple, honest work that left a tangible good in its wake. One Saturday, on a whim, I drove to the auto auction, and there it was, a 98 Ford F-150, forest green. Paint sun faded to a memory, the same truck my father drove. When I slid onto the cracked vinyl seat, it sighed the exact same sigh. I bought it for a song. Driving it home, window down, an old George Strait song on the radio, I felt a simple, unshakable rightness. I was back in my own life. Then, in early summer, the letter came, handwritten, Cedar Falls postmark, Kayla. I waited until evening to open it. "Mike, I graduated last week. I kept looking for you in the crowd. You weren't there. For the first time, I think I understood why. Mom always said you'd provide, no matter what. She never told me you were a good man, just that you were a good Mark. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to say I'm sorry, Kayla." I read it twice. Then I folded it and placed it in the drawer with Claire's ring box, not as a trophy, but as an artifact, proof that even the hardest lessons can sometimes, eventually, take root. Lydia called a few times after that. I let the phone ring. Some bridges, once burned, reveal they were only ever made of smoke. Now, my days have a rhythm that suits me. Coffee at dawn, helping out with the church crew in that old truck, accepting slices of pie from grateful neighbors. The peace isn't something I have to chase anymore. It just is. Someone asked me once, after hearing a piece of this story, if I was out for revenge. I shook my head. "No," I said. "In Iowa, we don't get mad. We get even, quietly." And that's the truth of it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't burn their world down. I just closed the door on the one they were burning down for me, and walked back into the light of my own. If you've ever given more than you had, loved more than you received, or carried a weight that wasn't yours to bear, just know the quietest walk away is sometimes the loudest statement you can make. Your story isn't over. It's just waiting for you to turn the page. Thanks for listening. The next story is already out there, waiting in the quiet.